I think if you're wanting to enter the charity sector, I do think you need to be fully aware, one needs to be fully aware that you're joining it for different reasons than financial reward and possibly career recognition as well. You know, you're joining it because you are purpose driven, but there are challenges and annoyances that come with that. I mean, one of the senior management team at one of the charities where I was a trustee says, it's hard, but hard is what we've chosen. And I think that's a perfect summing up of the charity sector.
I'm really pleased to welcome Julie onto the Charity Changemakers podcast today. Thanks so much, Julie, for joining us.
You're really welcome, Adam. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. And as I say more or less every week, I can't do justice to an introduction, so I always hand over with my slopey shoulders, hand that responsibility on. If you want to take a minute or so to introduce, who you are and what you do.
I'm Julie Randles. I'm CEO of Power2, which is a children and young people's charity based in Ashton under Lyne in Greater Manchester and working right across the Northwest, West Midlands and Greater London and various little bits around those areas.
Brilliant. That's great. And we'll obviously hear more about the charity, about the organisation as we move through the podcast. And
fill the entire 35 minutes with talking about what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, indeed. Which is great and really important, and exactly why we love to do these podcasts to raise awareness of the sector and the work that's taking place. And obviously our listeners really enjoy getting to know people that come on the show. So we have these quick fire questions that we fire at everybody. And so before we get into all of that, the stuff around the organisation and your career journey, what does a good weekend or a day off look like for you, Julie?
So if it's a day off, hopefully I'm on holiday somewhere. But for a weekend, I walk and I read pretty much.
Yes.
And that's great. Yeah. And I love doing both those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a real theme and about getting outdoors and which is really coming through.
Yeah, and I'm a great believer actually in walking and talking meetings. I'm neurodivergent, so actually being on screen is quite tough for me, anxious 45 minutes here. Actually walking and talking is great. So I have a lot of one-to-ones walking and talking, and sometimes the person on the other end is walking as well, and sometimes they're not, but they work really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And but I mean, walking and talking podcast. Maybe we could have. I don't know. Yeah, the technology. Maybe we could have pulled that off. Yes, somehow. Yeah, that. Next time. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and what's something small that brings you a disproportionate amount of joy?
So I actually think it's really important to take a lot of joy from all the small things, particularly when the big things are maybe slightly less joyful. So there's lots of them, but I'm going to go for having a hot bath with reading a good book and eating tomatoes whilst I'm in it.
What a combination. So yes. Yeah.
I know. And I can do that every day. So I'm really...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, indeed. No, that's great. And what's one thing that people always assume about your job that just isn't true?
So it's a tough time to be a charity CEO at the moment, as I'm sure you and all your listeners know, and I'm no exception. And so they all think, I think the casual observer thinks my job is really stressful, it's really busy, and I'm a very anxious person anyway, which doesn't help, and it's really hot. So I think they would be surprised at how much I love it and how lucky and proud I feel to have the job that I have. I've got an absolutely fantastic team, and the outcomes we deliver for children and young people are life-changing. So I'm not intending to retire anytime soon.
No, great, good. I'm sure we'll hear more about where that joy comes for you in the role, because we're obviously really interested in hearing more about your career journey, what that's looked like, and how it's got you to where you are today. And this always feels like a big question when I ask people it, but how did working in the charity sector come about for you?
Through quite a long and convoluted process, actually. So I was the first person in my family to go on to higher education. I thought that, and I really wanted to work with books. There's an absolute theme coming through here. I didn't know that office jobs were interesting. I thought I'd done work experience in an office while I was at school, and I thought it was just about filing, because that was what I was doing. And I thought you could only work in books by working in a bookshop. Didn't know all the other things that existed. And so I joined WHSmith on the graduate training scheme at the point at which WHSmith still existed. Graduate training schemes were a thing. And I was there for 7 years, and as part of that, I worked in WHSmith, worked in Waterstones because they owned Waterstones at the time, started working with publishers in a head office marketing role, and then moved into publishing, where I was in sales, because sales in publishing and having worked in the retail book sector are obviously very complementary in terms of skills. I spent a long time in that role in various different publishers. I think I've worked for nearly all of them now, especially since they've all combined. And then just after I had my daughter, I spent a year working for the Refugee Council on the asylum support programme, and doing the coordination between a group of 5 refugee agencies and the Home Office. And looking back, it just seems really, I think we didn't know what glorious times we were living in, because although it was still hard to be a refugee and an asylum seeker, and we're advocating for it, it was a glory time compared to what it's like now. So that's really interesting in retrospect. I then got headhunted back into the children's book sector, and I was managing director of Scholastic Book Clubs, which if you were North American, you would know all about, but is slightly less well known in the UK. But we were in 16,000 schools, and the model was we were getting children reading in schools. So they were children who were less likely to be going into bookshops, and we were giving a large percentage of the value of those sales back to schools for their libraries in free books. So the model was getting children reading, giving books to schools, absolutely about increasing literacy levels, because that's one of the surefire ways of increasing your chances of future aspiration. And obviously it had quite a charitable aspect to it. You know, there's a big chunk going to schools in free books. I loved that job. Reading books was part of my job, and my daughter, who was between 5 and 8 at the time, got to read some of the books for us, so she loved that too. And then when I left that job, I had been working with Save the Children on a project. We were supplying books to one of their programs, and when I told them I was leaving, I rang them to say that I'd be really happy to come and do some voluntary work for them if they wanted. 2 weeks later, they rang me back and said, "Did you really mean that?"
Yes.
So I then spent 3 months in the Children Head Office working on a UK programme at the time they had called Eat, Sleep, Learn, Play, where they provided books and clothing and vital resources to families living in poverty. And I was doing data entry. I was doing data entry for the families to make sure that they got the goods that were most appropriate for their situation, would help them out the most. And it was a really great job because it was purpose-driven rather than profit making. So, I'd finally got to where I wanted to be. But also because it was data entry, I could just listen to what was going on around me, and I picked up a huge amount. And Save the Children was really inclusive in terms of its volunteers as well at the time. So I got invited to all the big organisation meetings. It was around the time of the civil war in Syria. So there was a big meeting about whether intervention was appropriate or not. So it was great from that point of view as well. And then I discovered in that, having been trying to get into charity for quite a long time, that the way that you needed to apply for jobs in charities was very different to how you needed to apply. You need to apply for jobs in the private sector. And so I just kept on applying for internal jobs and getting them and getting them and getting them. And so I was there for 3 years in all, and I ended up as running the Families and Schools Together programme, which was, and I won't go into the exact details of why, but actually quite similar to the work that Power2 does. So there was a leap there.
Yeah.
I then moved to the Sutton Trust, which is a social mobility charity, as director of programmes, and then on to an organisation that again was a social mobility charity. So spent a chunk of time in the social mobility sector, which is effectively getting young people from disadvantaged backgrounds into a higher elite institutions, if you use some of the wording, so Russell Group universities, etc. And then I had a small sojourn in the international development sector, doing an interim role for a charity called Build Africa, where I spent quite a lot of time in Uganda before applying for the role of CEO at Power2. And I had actually applied for it 5 years before as well. So, a bit like Andy Burnham, kept my eye on the top job and then finally got it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And we'll definitely unpack some of that for sure. I think it's really, fascinating career journey where you can take that love of books and from a publishing background and make that transition. But also, I guess the power of volunteering in that first instance.
Absolutely, the power of volunteering, and a huge believer in it. My daughter's absolutely. I should say as well, my daughter absolutely brings me joy, but that's not small joy, that's constant joy. So I do talk about her a lot. She's 22 and she's a Brownie leader. So she's absolutely doing really intensive volunteering. I was a school governor for 10 years and I've now in my, let me add it up, 10th year as a charity trustee. So I did 2 terms of 3 years each at 2 different charities as trustees. And now I'm a trustee of 2 other charities. And I think it's absolutely one of the pieces of advice I would give to people wanting to get into the charity sector. Do some volunteering. Doesn't have to necessarily be volunteering at the cause that you want to work with, and also think really broad about volunteering because you might do far more of that sort of work than you think, and also be a trustee. It's great. You learn a huge amount as well as being able to hopefully give back to the charity you're a trustee of as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that value that comes from being a trustee, for you as obviously a chief executive today, to talk a little bit about what you think the value of the trustee roles has brought to you in your position.
Yeah, so I think very specifically in one of the charities I'm a trustee of, when I met the CEO, I said that I thought that one of the things I could bring is I know what it's like being charity CEO and it's really lonely, so that I could, support her in, going through that. I think also it teaches me a lot of CEOs there are obviously lots of different ways of doing things, that you have different ways of interacting with your board, none of them good or bad, just different. And I think also, and this is absolutely not a reflection on that CEO that I'm talking about at all, she doesn't do this, but sometimes I'm more aware of when I'm possibly a bit stroppier with my trustees than I really need to be. So
yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll probably keep coming back to that power of volunteer and power of trusteeship through the conversation. But as you sort of made your way through the charity sector to where you are now, as well as obviously the trustee roles and the volunteering, were there the things that supported you and helped you to make that the journey from volunteer to chief exec?
So I think I was actually really lucky at Save the Children. I worked with 2 really great senior leaders, Nick Wilkie and Ginny Lunn. I'd stopped being a managing director and then went in as a very junior volunteer, which they said afterwards that had done me a lot of good in the organisation, which had passed me by. I didn't see that at all. I was just delighted to be there. But I think because I'd come with those skills, they were really helpful in identifying them and thinking of ways in which I could use them for their benefit. This wasn't for me, absolutely for the organisation's benefit. So one of the things that I did quite early on as a volunteer actually was I was also working on the contract negotiation with all the suppliers for that programme that I was data inputting for, because I had experience in commercial contracts. So I worked really closely with the legal counsel at Save the Children. And so that was really helpful in my understanding the role of governance in a legal sense in the charity sector. And, I absolutely can negotiate an IP clause. And I think that's really helpful because sometimes a boilerplate contract has an IP clause in that, if you're not careful, involves you giving away your IP. I'm not answering the question you asked me, Adam, am I? I do this quite a lot. I go off down a tangent.
That's the beauty of the podcast. We love the tangents. Don't worry, Julie. Yeah, no, that's great. I think you are answering the question because I think what you have is that exposure.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
In the role that gives you all of these different dimensions and plays on your skill set and people are seeing that in you and giving you opportunity.
Yes, I think so. And I think the thing that people absolutely did recognise in me was my passion for getting children out of poverty, I think, and that not just material poverty, but also poverty of expectation. And I think that has really driven me. And I think there are lots of different ways of doing it. And a lot of it is about, it's strengths-based, which is very much something that we do at Power2, which is recognising what the children and young people can do, not what they can't do. So, talking about disadvantage is in itself a deficit term, but try and make it into an asset-based response as much as possible. So, yes, I think you're right. I think they did recognise my passion and my drive. And I think the other thing is as well, I really like the stuff. Yes. I'm lucky because, small charity CEO, you do a lot of the stuff, but I really like to get stuck in and get involved and pick up a piece of work if it needs doing. I mean, my team might say I get stuck in a bit too much and, I don't need to say I'd like to stay in. I'd like to get this train, please. But, I think I like doing I'm also de facto director of impact and evaluation at Power2, which I sort of taught myself with the help of some external pro bono work when I started there, and I love it. Yeah. But I think the way that my brain works is I really like to get stuck into the detail and work out exactly what works and what levers to pull. So that as well as, loving to be able to demonstrate what great impact. So I think that's done me quite a lot of good as well to like to do the stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
I think at Save the Children, they were very confident that I did not think that any of the work I was doing was beneath me. And I absolutely didn't. And I've never thought that.
No, indeed. And that, like you say, will come down to that. You want to see the impact of it, and that's what's driving driving what you're doing. How do you then strike that balance in a chief executive role then between, because you started to talk a little bit about that, between, being down in the detail, particularly in a small organisation where you clearly, it is, to a degree, it is, I mean, I still think you get this in bigger organizations, but all hands on deck type approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you strike that balance between being down in the detail and the bigger picture, the strategic side of the work that needs to be done?
I think that is a really hard balance to strike. And I don't think
it's a work in progress.
And I think it's partly because, again, coming back to what it's like for small charities, we don't have enough people to do the stuff because we don't have enough unrestricted funding to hire the people to do the stuff. And I've got, colleagues who absolutely, do lots more than their job title and job description says as well. I do actually think it's easier to be CEO of a bigger charity because I think you have a big team of people who are doing the stuff. And so I mean, I work a lot, I guess, and I'm always thinking about work. And I love my job, as perhaps I've mentioned. So I'm really happy to be always thinking about work, but I am always thinking about work.
Yes. Yeah. And tell us a little bit more about Power2 and the work, and then we'll hear more about that. Yeah, I guess that transition into the chief executive role. Yeah.
So we are a children and young people's charity. We work with children and young people who are living in poverty, social, emotional, and mental health needs. They have special educational needs and disabilities, disengaged from school and learning, maybe care experience, maybe at risk of child criminal exploitation, increasingly working with a lot of young people who've got EBSNA, emotionally based school non-attendance. So that's very different to normal truancy. It's young people who want to be at school but are just too anxious. And of course, all of those criterion are interlinked. They're multiple and intersecting challenges that the young people that we work with have. We work with about 1,200 a year. And we have our flagship group program is called Teens and Toddlers, and it's where 8 young people from those backgrounds spend 16 weeks supporting a toddler one-to-one in a local nursery with accompanying reflective sessions run by our program staff. It's completely transformative. It's unique. I don't think there's often you can say a charity program is unique. It's really great for lots of reasons. It gives young people who don't typically get put into a position of responsibility, and it really shows how much they grow when they've got that. It's particularly great for boys because it's really tough to be a boy with toxic masculinity, and in the nursery they can show their soft side. They really develop a strong one-to-one relationship with their toddler which makes them feel much better about themselves too. We had one young person we worked with who said, I realise that if this little child really values me, why can't I value myself? I think that. So amazing program. And we deliver variations of that, or adaptations if you're using charity language, and which takes exactly that same model. One of which is called Power to Thrive, where we have more of a mental health and wellbeing focus in the reflection sessions. One of which is called Power to Advance, which takes what is effectively 16 weeks of work experience and uses that to develop the softer employability skills that you need. And that fits really well with Andy Burnham's request to have more technical education, because part of that is about much more intensive early work experience. And one of which is called Power to Progress, which is where young people in year 8 in a secondary school mentor children in year 6 in a feeder primary through that transition to secondary, because that's where a lot of young people lose their way.
Yes, yeah.
And then we also, so we were only delivering teens and toddlers up until lockdown. And then we couldn't deliver a group program for obvious reasons, but we knew that our young people still needed our help. So we pivoted really quickly to doing one-to-one work and a program called Power to Rediscover, which was originally targeted at young people who need support to improve their well-being and re-engage with school and learning post-lockdown. Naively, we thought we'd just have to deliver that for 10 weeks in September 2020, and then the world would be back to normal.
Yeah, sure.
But here we are now, and children and young people are still absolutely experiencing the negative effects of COVID lockdown. So that's now a key part of our work, and we either deliver it in schools as our own programme, or we deliver it for local authorities through commissions, where we may be commissioned for up to 3 years to deliver support to young people who are care experienced or involved in the criminal justice sector, or need support because their school absence levels are high, or their families need support as well. And one of the key things that we do is we will go into the home to deliver, and not all charities or organisations who do our work will do that. So I think that gives us a point of difference as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And has the work grown then over the last few years? I mean, as you were beginning, before you mentioned the pandemic, I was thinking, these are all issues that were, I guess, elevated because of the pandemic, and maybe feel anyway a little bit more mainstream in people's awareness of them. Has that led to a growth in service demand over the last few years?
Definitely. And with our own programs that we deliver in schools, we can't keep up with demand, partly because we actually haven't got the funding to do it. And that's always one of the challenges, isn't it? Again, in a charity sector in general, but particularly in a small charity, you can't keep up with the work that will deliver the outcome because you haven't got the funding to deliver it. But also a lot of local authority commissions, and we're now doing a lot more with local authorities on care experience. So that's young people aged 16 to 25, and we support them with their well-being, with their independent living skills, with their employability skills. One of the things I always like to quote about independent living skills for young people who are care experienced is the current average age for somebody leaving the family home, if they've grown up in a family, is 24. And yet care experienced young people are out on their own age 16.
Yes. Yeah.
It's shocking.
Yeah, indeed. And it's so difficult to get your head around as to how people... Yeah, indeed. And I guess for you as an organisation, moving through that time to go from, what I'm hearing, to go from what sort of one programme to then a suite of programmes, and like you say, still not being able to meet demand. I mean, does that partly relate back? I mean, you said this. You said at the start of the conversation, it's difficult being a CEO of a small organisation and keeping up with it at the moment. Is that, I guess, this gap between funding and demand?
Absolutely. And, our outcomes are really great, really, really strong on lots of different dimensions. We could deliver the Teens and Toddlers programme in every school in England and Wales, and we'd get great outcomes for those young people if we had the funding to do it.
Yes.
We could scale up. We absolutely know we've got the organisational strength and model to be able to deliver it. Just need the funding. So if there's any philanthropists out there who'd like to make a huge difference to the lives of a lot of young people, please get in touch with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we will for certain make sure that a link through to the website is on the is in the show notes, so that people can absolutely follow that through. And I guess there might be other opportunities for people to support with Power2 as well. If this might be the first time that they'd be hearing about you. Is there other ways that people can get involved with the organisation?
Yes, so it's we don't have a volunteer model. We use employed staff to deliver our programs, and there's lots of solid reasons for that, which I won't bore you with. But we're always happy to talk to people who want to talk about how they can get involved. For example, and especially when you think about, we don't have enough people to do the stuff. So we've got a corporate partner who's helping us to develop our induction pack for new starters at the moment because our HR lead doesn't have enough time to do it. So that sort of work is always really valuable. And from our office in Ashton under Lyne, we've got a room called Cat's Wardrobe, which is actually set up in memory of a young care experienced person in the area who very sadly died last year. And it's really good quality second-hand clothing that young people in the care system can come and get what they need for life, but also if they need to go for interviews. We're developing that room to include a room where we can provide support as well, one-to-one mentoring and wellbeing support. And we have funding from a local organisation who's going to refit the rooms. Sorry, they're not going to give us the funding. They're actually going to do the refit. We are at the moment looking for somebody to do some plastering because that organisation can't do the plastering. So there's always lots of little opportunities, and it's about thinking through what we need to do.
Yeah, perfect. Well, like I say, we'll make sure that there's links through to the website so people can find you as they're listening to the show. And I guess I'm really interested in a couple of other things that you've mentioned through there. Actually, you said that Power2 was very much on the radar. You tried to become the chief executive before you did become the chief executive. Yeah, and I guess I'm always interested into how people have found that transition from a previous role into suddenly being the CEO of an organisation, and what that's looked like.
Yes. I don't know. I got asked this question in an interview once about whether, you should treat people who work for a charity different to people who work for a corporate if they're your employees. And I said, no, you didn't. You shouldn't, which was the wrong answer, it turned out. But I think that was because I was very specifically talking from the experience of where I was currently working, which was a corporate organisation, but we were absolutely very, very inclusive and very concerned with people's well-being. And, because we were all about reading children's books, that has a lot of benefits too. And so, and I guess also because I'd been managing director of an organisation as well, I think the things that are most surprising, and although I absolutely, know this thing that I'm about to say, and so will everybody who's listening to you, it's still incredibly surprising that something where you've got really great evidence of outcomes, but you don't have the funding can't happen. That wouldn't happen in the commercial sector. You just have a market, and the market would fund itself. And there are some big and good charities that have gone under over the past few years just because of that. So what else? It's nice not to have to show a profit, to just obviously have a surplus to reinvest, but not have to show a profit. I think as well, it's the whole management structure of a charity is really different. So I'm really lucky. I've got a great board of trustees and a really phenomenal chair in Mike Francis. But to have to, effectively be line managed by a group of people who are themselves volunteers but sit outside and aren't involved in the day-to-day, obviously in a corporate role, although you're responsible to shareholders, as long as you're actually delivering the goods, they're much less bothered. So that's a change. Although I do see my trustees, my board's role as, and especially my chair, we're standing shoulder to shoulder in the trenches together to deliver the charity strategy and thus the outcomes. And I guess that stands me in good stead in my trustee roles as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And being surrounded by good people, whether it's at trustee level or part of your senior leadership team, is vital, isn't it, to the continuing that strong outcomes and the delivery of the organisation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think Yeah, and it all rests on people, especially when you haven't got enough people to do the stuff. Sorry, I talk about the stuff quite a lot. You do run on goodwill. And I think if you're wanting to enter the charity sector, I do think you need to be fully aware, one needs to be fully aware that you're joining it for different reasons than financial reward and possibly career recognition as well.
Yeah.
You're joining it because you are purpose driven, but there are challenges and annoyances that come with that. I mean, one of my senior management team at one of the charities where I was a trustee says it's hard, but hard is what we've chosen. And I think that's a perfect summing up of the charity sector.
Yeah, absolutely. But, plenty of people, like you say, make that transition and
Yes.
thrive because they come with that. I guess it takes an empathy, doesn't it, to work in the sector and a resilience at times, like you say. But when you can see the impact and the outcome, that the difference, that whether it's based in an office or out on the front line of delivery of service, that you can see that impact and the difference that it's making on individuals' lives. That's that. I guess you come back to that motivation, that driving force.
Absolutely. And, we still get emails from young people that we worked with 10 years ago talking about what a difference our work made for them. Some of them come back and work for us. We've got huge amounts of lived experience in the organisation. All of the senior management team, including me, have lived experience of the issues we address. And I think about 70% of the team in general, we've got some previous service users in our team, but also on our board. And we're really inclusive in our recruitment processes. So that comes through as well, I think. And I think that makes it, I do think you actually have a responsibility as a charity to be that sort of recruiter, but it makes a huge difference to the organisation and its feel as well, because we sort of live and breathe what we do and why we do it and what a difference it makes.
Yeah, absolutely, and a real testimony to you as an organisation that like I say, that people that have been on the receiving end of the services then want to come and come and work within the organisation as well. And you said earlier in the conversation, when you're applying, I'm just thinking about people that will be listening to this that are thinking about potentially making that transition into the sector. Obviously, we talked about the importance of, the advantage of volunteering and trustee roles.
Mm-hmm.
You also said about you learned there was a different way of applying for jobs within the charity world compared to the commercial sector. Would you be able to give a bit of insight or unpack a bit of that of your learning from
Yeah, sure. So I guess, and I think this is possibly more widely known than I had appreciated, but I think, when the applications say they want a CV and a personal statement saying how you fit the role requirement, they really mean that. And so you have to do really detailed bullets rather than what I was doing, which was I'm really passionate about this kind of work. I would love the job, so still do say that, but well, I don't reply for jobs anymore. But, so I think really understand what it is you need to be responding to. And certainly we, and I'm sure a lot of charity HR departments too, would explain that if somebody asked. We always say, please provide a personal statement. If somebody were to say to us, what do you mean by that? We would be very happy to explain. I think when you get to a more senior level, and I guess particularly if you're transferring across from the private sector, but not necessarily at a really senior level, so middle management level, do always try to get on the books of a recruitment agency, because I think they are really helpful in first of all doing the job for you if what they've got to do is come up with a shortlist, but also in explaining to you what it is that they think is attractive in you for this role. And so to talk about that more, obviously it's quid pro quo, because it's great for recruitment agencies to have good candidates on their books. But I think as soon as I got to that level, it was easier for me in that application process to understand exactly what it was I should be saying.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a I guess there's a transparency there, isn't there, in being able to have that when there's a recruitment. I mean, obviously, as I talk as a recruiter, that's someone in between that can, is talking with the client and also with the candidate to help hold that together. But I think also for people, going through recruitment processes that are being handled by recruiters, I think in the sector, people are, like you say, they're really open. Like you would be if someone phoned up and said, well, what do you want in the cover letter? Really, having those stuff.
And we also went for applicants that we shortlisted. We actually send them the questions in advance as well.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's not, we're not looking for how good people are at being interviewed. We're looking for whether they'll be able to do the job. So that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's it's a really really good development within recruitment over the last few years, that more organisations are doing that, and to give people the best opportunity to demonstrate who they are and what they can do, not just like you say, because some people are clearly are great at interviewing, and they might not deliver when they walk through the door. Absolutely. So no, that's really good. I'm always these conversations, they just fly by, and when I always get blown away by how far the time has ticked along. If I can sort of come into this sort of last question, as you reflect on your career to date, what's one lesson that you've learned, possibly learned the hard way, that shaped you into the leader that you are today?
I think I'm going to choose the hard way. I think I have learned that I probably shouldn't show my heart on my sleeve as much as I did early in my career. One of my bosses through my career said to me, and he meant this as a compliment, that you tread on my values at your peril. And that's absolutely true. But I think sometimes I don't always need to show it. And I think I do that a lot less now. So yeah, I absolutely did learn. But I think that was a hard lesson, but particularly because heart on sleeve is me.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it, when you reflect on that? Because there's also that you've got to have that, and clearly there's a motivation for you as a person as to where you are now and what you're doing, and it's that passion that is going to drive and has driven the organisation forward over the last few years.
I guess, because there's a difference between passion and a heart on your sleeve in the way that I'm talking about it. I would never feel bad about demonstrating my passion, and I think people would expect me to. So, but sometimes you don't need to say that thing that you think.
Yes, indeed. Take a breath at times. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, indeed. Oh, well, Julie, it's been brilliant to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out to spend and share with us. Like I said, we'll make sure that you're tagged up, and as long as you're happy, and obviously links through to the website so people can go find out more about the organisation and the incredible work that you're doing and delivering.
Great. That's really great. Thank you, Adam. That has flown by. It was really great to chat, and thank you for inviting me on.
If you've enjoyed the podcast, please do subscribe and share it with somebody else in the sector. If hearing about the career journey in this episode has inspired you, I've put together a bunch of practical resources to help you land your next ideal role in the charity sector, including support on how to put together a CV and cover letter that will really work for you. You can join for free at the Charity Careers Network, a growing community full of advice, tools and honest conversations about charity careers. Both the podcast and the network are proudly powered by Charisma Charity Recruitment. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.